Happy New Year and welcome to episode 15 of the Tuesday Talk IU Athletics podcast, joined by Director of Athletic Communications Larry Dielman and Student Assistant Connor Kikowski. This is Sports Information Director Andy Alvarez, welcoming you all back to the podcast. It's been a few weeks. We took off for the holiday break. And obviously, we're going to be bringing you the results from the games that occurred after the last show and in this previous week, and previewing the week ahead with the beginning of conference play for men's and women's basketball. We're glad to be back after a 2 week hiatus. We hope everyone had a great Christmas break. It was nice getting some time off, but we are still getting ready to embark on this busy stretch in athletics. Larry, how was your holiday break?
It was definitely very good, very relaxing. Big shout out to Barbara Latier for that extra Monday and Friday off right before Christmas and the day after New Year's Day. Definitely Barbara came in the clutch there, but it's good to be back in the grind here. I know we'll be hitting crossover season soon, so lots going on in athletics. Connor, what you doing?
My break was pretty good. I got to spend some time with my family and my home friends who I haven't seen in a while, especially my one friend who moved to Florida but came up for New Year's, so it was good to see him. But yeah, I've been kind of bored, so I'm glad to be back and working with the games and stuff. And yeah, we got some busy stuff going on this week and getting closer to February, so glad to be back.
Obviously, I had a good break. I got a couple days off. I still had a few duty. Knowing me, you guys all know me. There were a few duties that still needed to get done, and sometimes I do a little more than I need to in those times. So, keep busy and everything like that. But it was good to get a break, spend some time with family, enjoy some time with some friends too, and got to do a few things. Got to go to the Nova men's basketball game on New Year's Eve. Went to the women's game on New Year's Day. So that was a lot of fun to do stuff like that and spend time, away from here. But glad to be back. Looking forward to the run with conference play starting, and obviously crossover season and the spring sports are ahead. So it's an exciting time, and it's going to be a grind, but we're looking forward to it. So let's get into what's been going on over the last couple of weeks. And today we'll have to get started with that. Later on the show, we'll be joined by former men's basketball player and current Immaculata women's basketball assistant coach John Flood will be our guest this week. So let's take a look at what's been going on since our last episode.
Let's kick things off with men's basketball. Since our last episode, men's basketball has played 3 games. Two were in December, and then we also had one Monday, January 5th. So, starting off with the ones back in December, the men's team played at Elizabethtown on December 16th. That was a 88-71 final in favor of the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays actually have been receiving votes in the D3Hoops.com top 25 poll. If you remember on the women's side as well, when they played Widener has been receiving votes in the top 25. So both teams have gotten a taste of a nationally recognized opponent. It was the first game of the season, actually, that Blue Jays game, that the Mighty Macs had a different starting lineup. The usual lineup this season has been Dylan Cruz, Jalen Flowers, Christian Chambers, Mandon Sipo, and Bowen Guger. However, against Elizabethtown, Coach Kyle Stramera changing it up a little bit. Dylan and Jalen were there, but Marquise Peoples Jr., Dom Vacchiano, and Kevin Tellisford were inserted into the starting lineup. The Blue Jays had a 2-point lead at the half. Jaden Williams led Immaculata with 14 points, but it just did not go the Mighty Macs way. The other game in December was at Delaware Valley. It was 82-57 in favor of the Aggies. Dylan Cruz with a team high 18 points, 5 boards, 5 steals. And it might have just been getting used to coming back from the break. They had a 2-week hiatus at that point. It was the 16th of the 30th, so it might have just been some readjusting overall. But then they came back home January 5th. It was the first home game of the new year for any of our sports. 78-70 was the final in favor of McDaniel. The score was closer at the end. The Mighty Macs actually made a nice little run at the end of the game. They were down by 23 in the final about minute or so, but Immaculata scored 17 of the last 19 points in about the last 70 seconds. A couple threes, couple free throws. They had the lead the first couple times in the first half, but they could not overcome a McDaniel run in the second half. But the Mighty Macs did do better than McDaniel in points off turnovers, second chance points, fast break points, and bench points. So a lot of positives despite the loss for the Mighty Macs, and that was their last non-conference game of the season, as we will talk about in a few moments, as they will head to Newman on Wednesday for the AEC opener. So, guys, obviously the results not where we want them to be, but there have been some moments here and there. As I mentioned, Coach Kyle Stramera kind of switching up the lineup, but that McDaniel game was definitely close at the end and maybe a sign of things to come.
Yeah, I think obviously that first game, the Elizabethtown game, they had a good run in the first half of that game, and they were kind of hanging in that first half. I know that was a game where you had some players battling illness in that game too, so that was one reason for some of those lineup changes in that too. So, but they hung in there that first half, and unfortunately the second half is kind of times where games have gotten away from them a little bit at times in the second half. Obviously, it was good to see the fight last night and at the end of that game last night. They didn't just pack it in. They didn't roll over. They continued pressing, trying to cause turnovers, got some opportunities and scored some baskets. So it shows that, they can at times fight. They can, try to make things happen. Hopefully, I mean, the good thing is now you move to a 0-0 start as of tomorrow night. It's a fresh start, so to speak, in conference play. Try to build some wins and, try to get into that top five.
The men's team schedule in December was a little different than you would mostly see for any basketball team. You had that Widener game at December 3rd, and then right to the Elizabethtown the 16th, and then another 2-week break before Del Valle, and then eventually here on Monday. So it's a little different than what you see. And maybe that was like something they weren't used to, and maybe they had to take some time to get like their footing back. But like looking at that McDaniel game last night in particular, like in the last minute there, they went on that 17-2 run, which was interesting to see, and hopefully they can carry that on to what's going to be a tough Newman team on Wednesday night, the defending AEC champs, which we'll talk about later in the show. But hopefully this can be the start, like you said, Larry, of things to come.
Also of note in that Dylan Cruz, our last guest on the podcast, was named to the Atlantic East Conference weekly honor roll for his performance up at Delaware Valley with 18 points, 7-11 shooting from the field with the 5 rebounds and 5 steals. So that was good to see Dylan to get some recognition in there for a strong play in that game against Delaware Valley. Moving on to women's basketball, the women's team won their final game prior to the break when they defeated Delaware Valley 76-58 on the road on December 18th. Olivia Etor led all scorers with 21 points, shooting 8 for 11, 72.7% from the field, with 5 of 6 from three-point range. Added 3 rebounds, 2 assists, earning Player of the Week honors in the AAC for the first time in her career. Carly Coleman registered her 5th double-double of the season with 12 points, 14 rebounds, all defensive rebounds, with 2 block shots and 4 steals to earn her second AEC Defensive Player of the Week award of the season. And Abby Grillo scored 18 points with 9 rebounds, just missing a double-double with 4 assists and a steal. Meg Robbins had 12 points and 6 rebounds. Immaculata was also able to get many players off their bench some solid minutes playing time. Leanna Adams scored her first collegiate points, and then her first career assist came on a half-court one-handed pass to Julia Pohl for a layup that was pretty good. You had that highlight up on the social media site for that one. It was a great pass. Good to see that. And then unfortunately, they went on that long break, for the holiday and everything. And then they came back on Saturday up at Haverford and fell 71-55 in their final non-conference game. Tough game, for the Money Macs coming back off that long break. Struggled shooting and on the defensive end. Abby Grillo had a very strong effort, led Immaculata with 19 points, 9 rebounds, 2 block shots, 4 steals, scored 11 points in the first quarter. Carly Coleman registered her 6th double-double, 16 points, 12 rebounds, and added 3 blocks. Sophia Korodakis scored 8 points off the bench. Despite the loss, Haverford is a good team. They beat Newman and took Elizabethtown, who was receiving D3Hoops.com recognition, to double overtime. So that's a solid team. And Haverford had played 2 games already in a tournament last week, so they were a little fresher. So they were able to, kind of take advantage of that at times, and just seemed like they felt more comfortable on the floor that day. So hopefully it's something, just a one-time game, and the Money Macs will be able to bounce back this week when they open up conference play on Wednesday.
I mean, yeah, that Haverford game was a little tough game for our team, but like you said, the break definitely probably has a factor into it. They were playing a lot more games though, compared to the men's team in December, especially after that All-Star game that we last did before we went on break. But yeah, they're having some good moments still, and they have like a lot of things to go off of as they get ready for conference play, which starts at Newman. A rematch of the AC Championship just to start, so hopefully they can get a lot of energy going before we see them on Gwinnett on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think this is a good effort, as Andy just said, with Haverford beating good teams like Newman and Elizabethtown. And I think we had said it yesterday. And going 8-3 in non-conference play as you prepare to enter Atlantic East Conference play, I think no one really should be complaining about that. I think that's a good record to have right now. Obviously, you're not going to go 11-0 most of the time or undefeated. The three losses that they've had, the Arcadia game, that was a close one. It just didn't go their way. It snapped the long home winning streak, but I mean, it was bound to happen eventually. The Salisbury loss could have went either way. That was just a tough loss at the buzzer. And then Haverford, obviously, are coming off of that long holiday break. So really, I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed of or embarrassed about. 8-3 is still a good record. You're at the top of the conference standings at the moment. Obviously, we'll see how things go once the conference schedule starts on Wednesday, but they've been doing very well. A lot of young players stepping up, a lot of veterans have been doing great. So it's good to see our current AEC champs doing their thing, and hopefully we can see them in the championship game again.
Yeah, and also note Abby Grillo was named to the Atlantic East Conference Weekly Honor Roll for her play at Haverford that day. So that was good to see, Abby Grillo get that recognition as well. And yeah, hopefully, going into tomorrow, they'll be able to bounce back. And it's going to be, it's always going to be a fight down there. It's not an easy gym to play in down there at Newman. So it's always going to be a battle between those two teams. And let's kind of start looking at AEC play this week with the men's. What do you have, Connor?
So as we're in conference week now, as we like to say here, and we look at the men's side of the preseason coaches poll, Newman and Marymount are at the top. Newman's at 46, Marymount's at 44. Newman had four first place votes, with Marymount have three first place votes. Then followed by Gwen and Mercy at 30. Marywood has 27. You get a little tough here in the 4, 5, 6. Centenary has 26, and Immaculata has 22. St. Elizabeth, which has 19, and Pratt has 10. As we look at the current men's standings as of January 6th, Pratt leads the way 8-3, followed by the defending champs at 7-3 of Newman, Marywood 7-4, Gwen and Mercy at 7-5, St. Elizabeth 5-5, Marymount 3-6, Centenary 2-9, and obviously the Mighty 1-10. So this is what it's looking like for the men's team right now. Obviously, both records go to 0-0 now as we are in conference play. So we all think.
I think obviously it's hard to get a gauge on the records of the teams because it's hard to you really know who everybody is playing strength schedule wise. I know Newman they play a strong schedule all the time and they're a good team, so I fully expect to see them and Marywood up at the top. Gwinnett has been strong the last several years. So you know that they're going to be, even though it's a new coaching staff there at Gwinnett, you know they're going to still have some players. You're still going to be a competitive games and competitive teams. St. Elizabeth is kind of like the unknown to the conference because they're new to the conference this year, but it's not like they're a brand new team or something like that. They were just playing in the United East prior. So yeah, I would expect them to be a solid team in there. Pratt is intriguing that they're 8-3 right now because they were a very young team last year. So it's hard to get a gauge on what they might be this year, being that's their second year in the conference now, and they were a very young team last year. They may not be playing as strong a schedule as the Max might have been playing. So that's a hard gauge to see what we might see when we play them. Obviously, Marymount sitting there at 3-6. You fully expect them to be better than that. You just know they play a very strong schedule non-conference wise. And then Centenaries had players been up and down as well. So I mean, it's going to be a fight for those five playoff spots. In the conference, 5 out of 8 are going to make the AEC tournament. So it's going to be a battle, and hopefully, the Macs are going to be competing for the possibility of being in that 4-5 playing game.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting turnaround, I guess, from the preseason poll versus the standings as of January 6th. The fact that Pratt was voted eighth out of 8 teams and now they're number one at the moment, being voted below a team that just joined the conference is interesting. But Right now, like you said, very unknown because, you don't know who they're playing and, they were a young team last year. And just Newman, Marymount, Marywood, we expect them to be, around the top. So it'll be a dogfight definitely as we get into conference play. But for both of our teams, you're starting at Newman is definitely a tall task. But I think it's a good indicator. It's a good measuring stick to see like what you're going to do in conference play. And then obviously on Saturday, you have a doubleheader at home against Gwynn and Mercy. So good start overall in conference play. So we'll see how both our teams do here in this first week of January.
I do think it's good to get that Newman game up out of the way now early. Also, maybe it might be as crowded in the stand, the building down there. That is a tough environment for the men's games. They've always been down there, a tough environment for our teams. Our players teams have always played well down there in games, so it should be. A couple years ago, we knocked them out of the Atlantic East Conference playoffs on their home court, and that was a kind of a lot of fun for our team that night. So hopefully they're going to be competitive in that. So moving on to the women's side, obviously in the preseason poll, Immaculata was the favorites to repeat as AEC champions with 40 points, garnering three first place votes. Marymount was slotted second at 39, getting two first place votes. And then followed up Newman right there, finalist the last 2 years in the AEC, 38 points. And then Centenary, 32, getting the remaining first place vote. So they got whatever the first place vote, and they're led by a very strong player in Vitija Davis, who's had a great first half of the year. So fully expect them to be one of the teams challenging. Then playoff team from last year, Marywood, who Immaculata knocked out in the semifinals here. So Marywood's been a competitive team in the playoffs. Last year, Gwynn and Mercy was a very young team. They struggled. They're at 23 points in that poll. St. Elizabeth, the new team to the conference, was slotted seventh with 18 points. And then Pratt, which did not field the team last year due to low roster size, brings up the last spot in eighth with 8 points. Looking at the standings, in the Money Max, we all know they had a great first half of the year, going 8-3 in non-conference play. Particularly with losing some of the pieces they lost from last year's championship team, it was good to see the team get through a tough schedule in that first half, strong schedule, 8-3. Centenary's been off to a good start, 7-4, won a couple of games last week, so they're entering the season firing on all cylinders. St. Elizabeth has kind of been the surprise as the new team, kind of the unknown coming in, slotted seventh in the poll. They've 6-5 so far. Marywood's 5-6. Gwynned's 3-8. Marymount's 3-8, but I know that's a very deceiving 3-8 because they play a very strong schedule non-conference. They play a lot of ODAC teams, so I would not expect them to stay that low in the standings. I fully expect them to be challenging for the title this year. Newman, once again, 2-9 start. Emily DuPont missed a series of games. They're, the reigning co-defensive player of the year. She's the player that shared the award with Tessa last year. So she's back, and she did miss some games. She's been back the last couple of games for them. They're at 2-9, but they're going to be a team challenging for a spot. And then Pratt's, got the season started 1-7. I think it's going to be a battle. Every game's going to be a battle in this conference, always has been. It's going to be a tight race to get those first seed to get the home court advantage in the conference tournament. And, obviously you want home court advantage for all your games and you host a potential championship game. We all know how much fun that was last year to have that game here. But it's going to be a battle for those top spots and to get the top three spots, to avoid having to play the 4-5 playing game. So that gets going to be a real battle.
Yeah, I think like same as the men, it's going to be a pretty interesting race to the finish line here in the second part of the season. I'm looking at some of these other teams' schedules. Newman, it's interesting. They've pretty much played the entire MAC. They've played like half of the MAC Commonwealth. They played a couple or one or two like MAC Freedom teams. So they're really testing their roster early on. And Andy, like you said, with Marymount playing a lot of ODAC schools. They saw Christopher Newport and Salisbury, so getting that coast to coast action as well. So yeah, deceiving numbers potentially, but as I said earlier, it's good to see the ladies up there at 8-3, nothing to complain about. And Centenary with Vitija Davis is going to be tricky as always, but it should be a good one. And like I said, starting off with Newman and Gwynedd should be a good test overall, and we'll see how things go, especially with St. Elizabeth joining the conference on both sides, just a complete unknown right now. But on the women's side, they're doing a little bit better. St. E's, the men are 5-5, the women are 6-5. So that's the potential wild card in this scenario.
Looking at the preseason poll, obviously Newman, Marymount, and Immaculata, those top three spots. You think about what happened last year in the playoffs. Newman took Marymount out at Marymount last year to advance to the championship at Alumni Hall, which was a battle in those two games. Big time. So like it's gonna be interesting to see, especially in this first game. Newman's gonna be looking for some revenge last year after the AC championship. And obviously, the year prior to that, they took us out at Alumni Hall in the AAC semifinals. So those two are always big rivalries. You expect Marymount to be good, and yeah, Gwinnett obviously had a young team last year, but they're probably gonna be a little bit better this year. Same thing with Marywood. Centenary was competitive last year, and St. Elizabeth and Prairie are obviously unknowns, but it's gonna be a dogfight to get those spots.
Yeah, I think you look at it. I mean, the games have always been tough, and the challenge is going to be on Immaculata this year to really, carry that play that they had in the first half into this, right away. Like get two big games right off the hop. I want to get a couple wins under your belt in the standings as soon as you can, and start playing from the front as opposed to playing from the back because, Newman getting Newman on the road's good. Newman's been good. Newman's been a strong team on the road the last couple of years. So, if you could go down there and get a win on their court early, that would be a nice, start to your season. And you get to come home. And I think it's been a while since the women have been home. So I think they're looking forward to getting a game back here at Alumni Hall, going up against Gwinnett, who's a local rival. And we're going to continue to be rivals. Obviously, what change is coming to the Atlantic East after this season and all. So it's good to see, we'll get them in here early this year. And then, it's going to be a battle. I mean, these next 2 months, it's going to be a dogfight for the top five spots and to get into that tournament. And I know the Mighty Macs are hungry to try to go back. They want another shot at it. They've had good play so far from Carly Coleman, Livy Tor, Abby Grillo. You're getting some young players mixed in right away, which is good. Some veteran leadership in Riley Cassidy, Meg Robbins. And then you have some, a lot of good young players coming off that bench looking to make a name and spot for themselves. So it's exciting and looking forward to getting going with conference play. And, you go down to our Wednesday, Saturday kind of run for the next couple of months. Guess now what might be a good time to bring in our guest this week, and that's former Immaculata men's basketball player and now Immaculata women's basketball assistant coach, John Flood. We'll be back with John after this break on the Tuesday Talk IU Athletic Podcast. Welcome back to the Tuesday Talk IU Athletics Podcast. We are joined by Immaculata women's assistant basketball coach and former men's basketball player, John Flood. Welcome to the show, John.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be a part of it.
So obviously, this year you go from playing straight into coaching here, and we're glad to have you in, trying to get the perspective of what it's like to go from playing to coaching. And it's been a long history here of Immaculata of our former players, both on the men's and women's side, getting involved in coaching.
So Flood, you were a four-year player here at Immaculata for our men's team. How would you describe your basketball identity during those years?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely say that I was a big team guy. I was very reliable and accountable. I feel like my coaches and teammates always knew what they would get out of me every day at practice. I was a big vocal leader on the court. I was never one to like chase stats or anything. I like embraced that role of doing all the little things for the team.
So now that you stepped right from playing into coaching, how did that opportunity with the women's program come about?
I mean, the one thing I could say about Immaculata is you really form relationships with everybody, not just your own coaches, even with other coaches. So me and Coach Britt, we formed a relationship over the years, and I was always keeping her updated on my like eligibility that I went through this year. And then when I got denied, I just was talking to her, and she actually told me how they had a position open, and I was interested, and I went through the interview process, and then I got it.
What has been the biggest adjustment from going to the locker room to joining a coaching staff?
I'd say the biggest adjustment is really just like looking at the game in a bigger picture. Like as a player, you're really just focused on like your role and your opponents and like scouting stuff. But as a coach, there's so much more that goes into it, like the practice plan, building the scouts, dealing with the team's emotions, learning how to communicate with the players from a coaching standpoint instead of a player.
How has your experience as a player helped you connect with the woman you now coach? Obviously, you were very well known over your time here in Immaculata. You were pretty much everywhere where we saw you. So, how's that helped you become a coach?
I mean, I was just in their shoes. I was just an athlete last year. So I feel like I'm good at like helping them out and understanding them. I feel like I'm honest with them and like they know where I'm coming from is a way that like I want them to succeed and they know that.
So you guys have gotten off to a good start this season in non-conference play, 8-3 overall. What do you think the team will need to do to be successful in AEC play this season?
So we had a good non-conference schedule. We went 8-3, but I feel like we really just need to stay consistent and not get comfortable. We had a loss the other day against Haverford. I feel like that kind of reassured us not to stay comfortable and where we're at. It's conference play now, so we're really 0-0. So as long as we stay hungry, stay consistent in what we do, we should be good.
Yeah, I think for you, it's got to be interesting. You know all these opponents. You know these gyms. You know what type of styles their teams. Even you were on the men's side, even the women's side. You probably are pretty familiar with what you had seen over the years for some of these teams and these facilities. So that kind of fun knowing that you're going back to the same places again, to kind of on this end of the coaching.
Yeah, definitely it is. I have, especially now with conference phobia even more because you play against these conference teams a lot, like every year how I did. But yeah, it's definitely fun. I enjoy it a lot. Miss being on the court, but I definitely enjoy coaching a lot also.
What lesson do you hope your players take from your journey out here at Immaculata, and that you're trying to help them, kind of impart onto your players?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely how you respond to adversity. So my freshman year, I got injured, tore my meniscus. I didn't know what it'd be like for me sophomore year, but I loved the game. I loved working. So you got to continue to work every day. Eventually ended up starting my sophomore year. And then even this year, working out for the first month of school, getting ready to play and then getting denied my eligibility. I could have like sought over and been sad, but instead I knew that like the basketball game wouldn't end for me. And that led me into coaching. So it's just really how you respond to adversity.
What are your long-term plan of coaching? Do you want to like hopefully stay here in Immaculata or like be a head coach one day? Like, what do you see yourself in these next couple of years?
Honest answer, I don't really know what the future holds for me for coaching, but I mean, I really do enjoy coaching. This is my first year, but not only coaching in general, but especially here at Immaculata, being an alum and now being a part of the staff after playing.
You're a graduate of Roman Catholic and you played in the Philadelphia Catholic League. How do you feel playing in a league like that helped prepare you for college basketball and for now what you could bring to your players and from a coaching standpoint, from playing in those type of tight games and tough gyms against really good opponents, practicing and playing against Division I players in high school? How do you think that helped shape you for what you do now?
Definitely taught me toughness, playing against good players, competitive players, bringing it to a standpoint here in college, just reminding the girls that like the game's never over until the buzzer hits zero. Even if you're down 10 points with 2 minutes left, like it's not over till the last whistle.
Thank you for joining us and being our guest this week, John. We wish you and the team good luck on Wednesday night down there in Newman. I know I'll be looking forward to that game and seeing the two teams match up again. And we appreciate you coming in and joining us this week.
Of course, I appreciate it also. Thanks for having me.
And we'll be back after this quick break on the Tuesday Talk IU Athletics podcast. Well, welcome back to the Tuesday Talk IU Athletics podcast. That was a really good interview there with John Flood, getting some insights on, transitioning from playing into coaching. We've got some exciting times coming up here with basketball conference schedule. We got men's volleyball will be starting next week, and we're getting closer and closer to swimming will be back soon. They'll have their senior day coming up in January, and they're getting to run towards the conference championships. And then we're going to have all the spring sports starting up. Before we know it, we'll be back outside at lacrosse. Hopefully, we don't get that early season snow like we had last year out there. It's going to be a cold day out at DWS when we do that. So
Can't wait to freeze outside in February lacrosse. Woo!
yeah, it's always a lot of fun, and so it makes it exciting. And then obviously, we're baseball and softball are right around the corner soon too. So looking forward to spring, and then flag football is going to be coming in. So we'll be bringing in some different guests and some different sports and everything like that. We're looking forward to it. So we will hope to catch you next week on the Tuesday Talk IU Athletic Podcast. Roll Max.